And just notice how you settle this morning. Sense the contact of your back with the floor. Think of the line of your spine. From your tailbone to the base of your skull. Just notice how clear that is to you, and as you travel from your coccyx to your head, what places can you clearly sense touch the floor, or clearly sense are lifted away from the floor? And where is it a little greyer, a little murkier? Perhaps you're not sure whether there's contact or not contact. Where along the length of your back can you sense the movement of your breathing? Feel any signs of your breath around your shoulder blades? The vertebra between your shoulder blades? In your armpits? And then a little lower down, the middle ribs below your shoulder blades. The small ribs, the floating ribs, and the area of your waist, or a bit above. So the ground can give us clearer feedback, and in the places that aren't in contact with the ground, we don't get that same feedback from something external to us. It's more internal. Roll your head a little. Just notice how that is for you this morning. Do you have any sense that it's a movement of your head on the floor, through space? But if you think of the image of your spine, its length, do you feel any sensations further down along the length of your spine in the direction of your pelvis? And pause for a moment. And please roll to one side and bring yourself up to sitting. Could you sit leaning on your hands behind you with your feet on the floor in front of you and your knees bent? So you stand your legs in a kind of fashion. Now just notice how you choose to place your legs. How far your feet are from your buttocks, the distance between your feet, the distance between your knees, and where you've chosen to put your hands to lean on them. So all these are variables that you can change at any time that you can explore. So maybe try moving your hands further away from you, further behind, and see how does that influence how comfortable you are here. Move your hands further apart, distance them from one another, or bring them closer together. And it's not that there's one right place. There may be a place that feels better for you right now, and sometimes we interpret better as from our familiar, not from what is necessarily more comfortable or easier for us. Now, begin to tilt your knees. So find a comfortable place for your hands right now, and you can keep changing it. You can rest off them anytime you need. Begin to tilt your knees a little to the right and come back to the middle. And just begin to notice what happens through yourself as you tilt your knees and you bring them back to point towards the ceiling. So could you explore the distance between your feet that would allow the tilting of your knees to the right to be a little bit easier? So you could try bringing them close together, touching and tilting them. You could try spreading them wide apart and tilting them. Feel, how does the position of your legs influence the freedom in your hip joints and the invitation that's given to your pelvis to begin to follow the movement of your legs or not? And then perhaps how you involve more of yourself through your torso. Could you begin to find the distance between your feet that would allow you to bring your left knee closer in the direction of the sole of the right foot as your knees tilt to the right, and then come back? So you may notice that one knee tilts, the other knee stays upright, but think of tilting both knees, letting both knees move to the right and then back to the middle, and looking for the distance of your feet from your buttocks and from each other that allows your left knee to gradually come in the direction of the sole, to touch the sole of your right foot. And then come back. Just notice how your weight shifts on your hands, what you do with your head, and what happens through your spine, through your ribs as you do this. The next time you're in the middle with your knees, begin to explore tilting your legs to the left. Gradually, maybe you can sense that this requires a whole body coordination from your toes, your feet, your ankles, your legs, your hips, your pelvis, your spine, ribs, shoulders, head, eyes. So it's not that your knee is coming on top of your foot necessarily, but if it's possible, can it come to the sole of your left foot? And now begin to go side to side. some people are finding it easy to take one hand away from the floor. If you're doing that, see how, is it possible for you to keep both hands on the floor? And if you weren't doing that, how is it possible for you to find a way of doing that? So that as your knees go to the left, your right hand would come off. As your knees go to the right, your left hand would come away from the floor. Now keep both hands on the floor for a moment. And continue tilting your knees to the right and to the left. Let's see if you can go slowly down to the side, but then fast back through the middle. If you have any problems with your back, lower back, go slow, not fast. But for everyone else, if you don't have any problems with your lower back, lower your legs slowly to the side so that one knee touches the sole of the other foot, and then come back quickly through the middle. And pay attention if that invites a particular organization through the middle of you. You use your belly, in your chest, your thorax in a different way when you change speeds. So go back to going slowly throughout the movement and find out. What's happening with your pelvis and your lower back? What's the relationship between your head and your pelvis? Do you have any sense that when you come through the middle, you fold a little through yourself? Your head and your pelvis get a little closer together, towards one another, and when you go to the side, you get a little taller. Okay, leave that, lie on your back and rest. And just notice if exploring those movements and yourself in those actions, that anything comes forward in your awareness as relating a little differently within yourself or to the floor, to the ground. Please bend your knees, stand your feet. Feel the contact that your feet make with the floor. And very slowly begin to tilt your knees in this configuration. So you're tilting your knees in space. How do you involve yourself to do that? What's happening through yourself? So now a little constraint. Please stay on your back. And have the idea that your intention would still be for one knee to come down to touch the sole of the other foot as your legs tilted to one side or the other, but don't make it happen. Just think that's the direction. Sense the changing contact of your pelvis with the floor. What happens in your lower back and in your ribs on the right side and the left side? So you want your feet to be at the distance that if they were to go completely to the floor, that your one knee would come in the direction of the sole of the other foot. How are you breathing as you're doing this? Would it change or influence what you sensed if you were to bring your breathing, the flow and rhythm of your breath, more into the foreground and the movement into the background? And if you think about those places that you were discovering yesterday that were less in your awareness, where you feel like there's an absence of sensation, where it's likely there's an absence of differentiation, which means that the possibilities for movement in those places is not present for you, that they can't participate in the action in ways that are possible. So they move as a block or a lump together. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that happens in every action and every orientation. But in our attention, we can learn to exclude paying attention to an area that's not alive for us, and then forget to listen there when we do explore something else in another configuration. So which leg do you start the tilting with? Or where do you start your tilting, I should say? So some people, as they tilt, say to the right, start with the left knee. And others start with the right knee. Try both. And which one do you sense the movement in first as you return? The leg that's closest to the ground? The leg that's furthest from the ground? Or maybe you don't begin the movement from your legs. Maybe you feel something in your abdomen or change in relationship of your back to the floor. Would you organize your movement, your action, so that you lead the tilting of your legs with the rolling of your pelvis? Or a movement of your pelvis that may have rolling in it, but that leads to a shifting of your weight on your pelvis, that if your legs are soft, they could simply flop. They could fall once the weight of them is past their being supported by the feet, and if it's not held by the musculature of your legs could simply more flop a little to the right or a little to the left as a consequence of no work needing to be done because you're organizing the movement more through the center of yourself. That's good. Lengthen your legs and rest a moment. Please roll yourself up to sitting. And sit with your knees to the right and your feet to the left in side sitting position. And put your hands where they can support you in order to begin to slide your right arm forward on the floor in front of you and back again. The palm of your hand. You put your left hand where you need to support yourself. Now, even if you don't need the hand, try it and see if it makes a difference. So some people are keeping their left hand on their left thigh or behind them. So try, put your left hand on the floor somewhere near your left leg, your left lower leg. And then slide your right hand forwards on the floor and back again. What does that ask in your hips, in your back, that might be a little different to if you put your hand on the floor in front of you somewhere? Maybe it makes a difference for you, maybe it doesn't. So you can try a little bit in different directions, but mostly forwards. And notice what's happening through the rest of yourself as you do that. Do you feel a changing contact of your legs with the floor? Does the shape of your back change? And what do you do with your head? Do you lower your head down towards the floor or do you hold it up? Where are you looking with your eyes? Your eyes following your hand? Or orienting somewhere else? Now try the same thing with your left hand now. So put your the palm of your left hand on the floor in front of you and begin to slide your hand forwards on the floor and come back. What does your pelvis know about sliding your left hand forwards? What relationship does your head have with the floor? What directions are easy for you? So as you continue to slide your left arm forwards, hand forwards, can you begin to turn your head as if you wanted to look under your left armpit? And then come back. Just notice, does that influence what happens through your back? So your hand is still going forwards. And in order for your head to begin to orient, to look under your left armpit, what shape would your spine need to make? Can you go slow enough that you begin to scan through yourself to notice what's happening in your ribs, the middle ribs, the lower ribs? Is it a movement of the vertebra of your neck? Or is it a movement that includes the whole length of your spine and your pelvis? Okay. leave it, roll down onto your back and rest a moment. So Moshe was interested in self-knowledge, self-awareness that could help you develop the means to know what you're doing, to be able to do what you want. So not to be able to do something in one way and have a right way, but so that you could consciously perhaps first, and then unconsciously, be able to adjust your action to the situation, the context, the environment, in a way that enabled you to meet whatever you were intending to do in the moment, or to change it if necessary. And in anything we do really well, we do that. We can include in our awareness many different things simultaneously. And when one element begins to change, we're perceiving it and adjusting the others accordingly or not, depending on what we want to do. Please roll yourself up to sitting. Sit in the same way and return to sliding put your left hand somewhere for support and begin to slide your right hand on the floor forwards again. And feel where would be the moment in this action of sliding your right hand forwards on the floor where you could direct your head as if you wanted to look under your right armpit. So why use the floor for support? So an aspect of that was mentioned this morning when someone discovered that once they related to the floor in a different way, they felt safe. So when we have the support, when we're using the floor in a way that's actually supporting our skeleton, then it gives the opportunity for some of the musculature of our back, of our head or neck, not to engage in the usual way. So although you may be able to do it, not putting your left hand on the floor for support, it can make a difference. And if you're not sure, play with it. See if you can sense a really subtle difference in your breathing, in the ease or the lightness of your movement, in the ability to let the head hang. The little jewels, the little treasures are there to find if you can listen. And usually to listen differently, we need to go slowly and do less that we can do. Okay, rest in sitting for a moment. Any way you like. And then change your legs to the other side. So sit with your feet to the right, your knees to the left. And begin to explore which hand would be easier for you to slide forwards on the floor. Your right hand or your left hand? So whichever you feel is easier for you to actually put your palm of your hand on the floor and begin to slide it forwards, do so. And then at some moment, see, when could you turn your head in the direction as if to bring your face underneath that arm in the direction of looking towards your armpit? And forwards is a direction. If forwards isn't easy for you, you can go a little left or a little right, but know where forwards is. Know when you're changing your orientation and begin to see if you can sense what is it that I'm doing that makes it easier here and more difficult there in the other direction. Is your other hand free to adjust its position on the floor? And now try using your other hand. First of all, just sliding simply forwards and back so you get that action a little more familiar. Feeling how far through yourself can you sense this movement traveling, engaging you into the action. And where would you begin to turn your head as if you wanted to look under your armpit? And then leave it a moment, roll down onto your back and rest. There's more than 100 joints in the spine, 24 vertebrae. And all those joints have the potential to move a little bit, which makes our spine such a flexible, mobile column, and yet inherently strong. When we've used ourselves in certain ways for years, the soft tissues can change around the structures. So it takes time and many, many explorations. And I say repetitions not in the way of an exercise repetition, but in terms of sensing, feeling yourself doing an action. Depending on how long you've been using yourself in a certain way, for the structures to adapt. Sometimes it happens very quickly. And for others, if there's injuries or has been bigger difficulties, it can take longer. So we get glimpses of sensations, of movements, of possibilities. And then our practice is to remember those glimpses, listen for them again, connect them with something else, expand our self-image, so that our ability to create more and more choice in ourselves and our actions and our lives begins to develop. Please roll yourself to one side and come up to sitting. and stop and go back down. So, did you think about using anything of the ways you were rolling yesterday? Maybe spontaneously, maybe consciously, or maybe just there was that gap where you're on your back and then you're going to be up. So that your awareness didn't somehow track where or how you were moving. So roll again to come up to sitting. And follow how you get there. Maybe you'll be surprised that there are some elements in there that you didn't notice yesterday that have come together. But when we immediately call back a habit, a habitual way of lying to sitting, we go into using ourselves in that particular way again. So sit with your feet to the left and your knees to the right. Put both of your hands on the floor in front of you. And slowly slide both of your hands forward and back, bringing your awareness to your pelvis. Bringing your awareness to how your weight is coming more and more forwards. There's a bending in your hips. You may feel the weight coming more towards your right knee and your left knee. Pelvis rolling a little forwards. Find out if it's possible to free your pelvis from the floor as you do this. To use the reaching of your arms, the moving of your head forwards and downwards in space, to move your weight more and more onto your knees so that your pelvis could begin to lighten on the floor and perhaps even lift a little bit from the floor. Maybe try doing it with one hand for support and the other hand reaching forwards. And which hand would you choose for support and which hand would you choose for reaching? And then come back. Next time you come back, switch your legs over. Now this is when the configuration of your legs can also make a difference. If we lock ourselves into a way of one foot, your leg being really close, the front leg being tight into you, and your knees bent back hard, then it's going to inhibit the possibility of the transmission of motion, the flow of motion through your skeleton. And begin to explore the same idea here. So you can lean on one hand and lengthen the other hand further forwards. And what has turning your head and looking under your armpit, in the direction of your armpit, has that got anything to do with the freeing of your pelvis from the floor? Explore different directions. Maybe for you right now, there's a slight variation of forwards, a little to the left or a little to the right, that might make a difference in being able to lighten the weight of your pelvis on the floor. Try your other arm if you haven't already. best place for you right now, a place that's adaptable, movable, where you could put your other arm where it might assist you. So you're thinking that you want to lighten the weight of your pelvis on the floor, which would mean bringing your weight more onto your knees or less onto your knees. What's the relationship between your head and your pelvis that you can find as one arm or both arms slides forwards on the floor that connect the two? Okay, leave it, lie on your back and rest. You lie on your back, bend your knees and stand your feet. Bring your arms overhead on the floor. Somewhere where your arms can lie out to the sides a little bit, maybe, where your arms are in contact with the floor. Imagine yourself sweeping your arms on the floor above your head to the right. So your left hand would stay on the floor, sweeping to the right. Your left arm would move downwards on the right. And that you could find a moment where you'd roll your pelvis, tilt your knees, and continue rolling and folding, sweeping your arms, using your arms in a way that would help you come up to sitting to the right. So just think about it for a moment. Imagine it. It's very difficult for most people to imagine clearly. And yet if something's difficult for you, and you can improve the detail, the image, the colors, the relationships in your imagination, the sensations in your imagination, you'll improve your ability to enact what you want to do, and vice versa. But it takes practice. So once you've imagined it a couple of times, begin to do it in a way that you could compare, parallel what happened in your imagination, in the action of yourself in your imagination, and what you're actually doing when you begin to do it in reality. So when you're ready, begin to sweep your arms, roll yourself a little to the right and maybe come back a little bit. So you're checking in. You're referring back and forwards between your imagination, your image, your picture, your kinesthetic sensations in your mind's eye, and what happens when you actually begin to perform the action. And have you organized your legs bent when you're on your back in a way that your left knee could come in the direction of the sole of your right foot? So for most of you, that means your feet need to be a little wider to begin with. And then go back down again. When you arrive to sitting, if you haven't arrived, don't rush to get there. Go a little bit and come back. Feeling through all of yourself, your head to your toes. The next time you're on your back, rest there a moment. Then begin to explore in your imagination again. You can have your legs long or your legs bent. Bring your arms on the floor somewhere overhead so that your actual position is a little closer to the starting position of from where you'll be moving. And in your imagination, sense, see, feel. How would you organize yourself to sweep your right arm, keeping your hand on the floor and everything as close to the floor as possible? When would you lift your head? Do both arms start moving together? What happens in your pelvis, your legs, through your torso? What shapes do you make? And where are the different parts of yourself as the shape through the center of yourself and the relationship of your head and your pelvis changes? And can you notice where your image breaks down? And then, when you've imagined several times, begin to do it. Begin to sweep yourself, your arms to the left. When do you bring your pelvis into the action? Compare what you're feeling, what you're sensing, where the floor is giving you feedback, and how that is the same or a little different, or a little more detailed or a little less detailed than what you imagined.
Stephanie, do you mean left or right?
Left. We did right before. Could you think about starting with your pelvis? Of using your pelvis in a way that enabled your legs to either tilt if your knees are bent, or to roll and bend if your legs are long, in a way that engaged your back, begins to roll you onto your side, sweeping your right arm overhead on the floor, keeping on rounding, pelvis continuously rolling and turning, so that eventually, going through a pathway up and down, a little bit further and a little bit back, you can fill in some of the dots. Some of the moments where you lose your legs, or you forget your left arm, or you forget your breathing, or you notice an effort in your left leg, or your right foot. Pause on your back a moment. Lengthen your legs. It always surprises me how sometimes we feel as if there's so many parts, so many things to pay attention to. And yet, that it seems impossible to collect them and integrate them into one act. And yet, that's the capacity our nervous system has, and we do it in areas of our life all the time. And experiencing this in learning, it's the nature of learning. One that we inherently have the capacity as human beings to learn, to bring all these sometimes seemingly bits and pieces together in a coordinated, timed action in space. But if we want to do it quickly, it doesn't happen. It can't. We have to learn it. Learn to sense it, feel it, think it, get familiar. And gradually, we come together in a way where we can use all of ourselves with less effort and greater ease. Could you please bend your knees, stand your feet. Bring your arms on the floor overhead. Could you sweep your arms to the left, fold yourself, roll to your side, fold yourself and come up to sitting. And then once you're sitting, can you flip your legs over to the other side and go down to the right? Rolling down your right side, elongating on your back, and then continuing around in a circle. Feel how the sweeping, reaching arms can help you find books on the floor. Unexpected
Coffee cups.
coffee cups. It's all right. I just notice, is it getting any easier to maintain your orientation? Notice where your forward is. Next time on your back, can you change directions? Are you liking the way you're doing this? Liking it more? If you wanted to make it feel even more delicious, how could you do that? Can you feel those moments where the quality changes? And maybe looking for ease or looking for pleasure in that moment could help guide you in a direction of your neighbor, or yourself. Would smiling help? So we've got some individuals going in the opposite direction, which makes it a little more likely that you'll bump into someone. Moshe always says that the social part of something is the most difficult. You know, getting the timing right with someone else. It's okay if you're on your own and just have yourself to account for. Someone else, it increases the degree. Okay, let it go. Lie on your back. Sense yourself now. How you're relating to the floor, along the length of your back. Are there any more signs of your breathing in relationship to the floor, or around the area of your shoulder blades now? And then when you're ready, slowly roll yourself to the side. Come up via sitting. And bring yourself up into standing. And just take a moment to sense your world now, your internal world, and your sense of the world around you. Ground under your feet, space around you, how you sense yourself in standing now. And try turning a little in one direction, a little in the other. How much of yourself is involved? Feel a little different to yesterday? And then begin to walk. Continue to keep some of your attention with yourself as you move into a break and a little, probably social moments.